7 of 10 will choose a hotel over a short-term rental. And the number one reason that they do that is because of amenities.
How do you go from being a film and TV producer to ending up as a tech hospitality entrepreneur?
I have been a short-term rental host forever. I was creative director at Twitter. I was then a creative director at Facebook. If I shouldn't have quit my job that early.
Is there really a competitive edge here that we can bring to the marketplace? Is there really something unique? How do you automate without losing that human element?
Apple Pay and you're done. Very simple and very friendly and human.
Make it easy. Assume the guest is drunk or tired or both.
I don't think there's a get rich quick. And I think if it is, you should be very wary of it. I will say, you want to connect to the person who will come in. And it is very important that we are people and that you see our faces.
All right. Welcome everyone to the Hospitality Edge podcast, the podcast where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality. Today, I'm super excited to have Annie Munro with me as a guest. She's the co-founder and CEO at the Host Co, a digital marketplace for guests to facilitate transactions and to facilitate, coordination of those extra services. Also, an ex-media expert, a film producer, TV producer, and just someone that I'm really, really looking forward to chatting with. So thank you so much, Annie, for being here today.
Thank you. I am very thrilled to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Annie, why don't we start with, this concept of the hospitality edge, right? What would you say, before we go into your story and how you got into hospitality and where you are right now, what would you say gives you an edge in terms of the way you deliver hospitality?
So the way that we deliver an edge is by providing better and more interesting services to short-term rentals. So, the short-term rental industry is so much younger than the traditional hotel, enterprise hotel industry. And it has long been missing so many of the things that hotels provide. Late checkout, concierge, spa, food. And in fact, 7 of 10 travelers still will choose a hotel over a short-term rental. And the number one reason that they do that is because of amenities. That is, in all surveys, it's because they don't have enough amenities, right? So the edge that we are providing is taking what you can experience in a hotel and bringing it instantly to a short-term rental.
That sounds like a great edge. I love that. All right, so let's get into the story a little bit. So how do you get into hospitality? What's your background? How do you go from being a film and TV producer to working with large, big tech companies to then eventually ending up as a tech hospitality entrepreneur?
Well, I started my film and TV career. Much of it was at Home and Garden TV, HGTV, producing. And I went to film school in Los Angeles and then worked in film, and HGTV produced and directed Curb Appeal, Landscape Smart, Design to Sell, Design on a Dime, so many HGTV shows, right? And really developed a love for design and essentially for hospitality through that. And I also met my current co-founder through HGTV. And he, after many years at HGTV, he and a designer left and they'd started a real estate company, a real estate and property management company. And their model was buying homes in distress in vacation areas, which, this is a while ago. It might have been a little easier at that point, but buying homes in distress and flipping them very quickly, furnishing them in a very, HGTV dialed in way, and selling them as a ready to go rental property. And that means you buy it. Do you want us to rent it tomorrow? Because they also built up the property management company. So they already had the listing up. They already had the keys. The Wi-Fi was on. You buy it. You buy it at a real premium, obviously. And tomorrow, rent it out for you. So they built up this beautiful portfolio of houses. Some they kept, some they sold, but they always kept the property management company and grew and grew and grew that. Meanwhile, I have been a short-term rental host forever, and I own one of the homes from my co-founder's property management company. And I went further into tech. I was a creative director at Twitter. I was then a creative director at Facebook. So I was continuing sort of that film and television, bringing that into tech. But throughout all of that, I would talk to my co-founder, who was then a good friend, and say, everyone's asking this. All these guests are asking the same questions every week, right? And we're unable to fulfill them. And I noticed that my property manager has a lot of back and forth conversation about things that just should be automated, right?
Mm.
Or, hey, there are all these local services, and even in guidebooks, we're just recommending them over and over again. But first of all, people don't like to read. I know this from working in tech, right? People want things visual. And we're just not doing a good job of fulfilling all of their needs like a hotel would. So basically at this time when I was at Facebook, I said, I'm gonna put a team together and we're gonna build a beta and we're gonna try and solve this with something that's just a website that automates all of these guest questions out directly to the vendors and enables on-site sales. So firewood, phone chargers, hangover kit, whatever. We built this beta. And this is, mind you, this is kind of tail end of COVID too. And we put it into 7 houses. And it was a website. It was a janky little beta. I will tell you that. If you're
It was pretty bootstrapped. I have here, 12 grand, but the results you had on those 7 houses were impressive.
Yeah. 40% of guests bought something within the first month. 93% of guests opened the store. I quit my job, which was way preemptive. I shouldn't have quit my job that early.
Was it really? Was it really did you really quit as fast? Or did you wait until you had a little bit more traction? Like, what was the timing of you deciding, what, I'm going to actually do this full time?
Oh no. We were still in private beta, but it was doing so well and it was becoming so time consuming that I said, you know what we're going to do? I'm going to quit and I'm going to take some time and we're going to raise some money as well. Free product, but we're seeing traction here. And that's going to take time too. So I quit. Again, I probably should have waited a little longer, but oh well. And the rest is history. We just started growing. And then we, about a little over a year ago, released our full version of our product with all the vendors and all the bells and whistles.
Love it. Now that you talk about it, it sounds like it was a very intuitive decision to say, let's just quit and let's just focus on this full time. But I'm sure there's a lot of thought that went into that. I'm sure there's a lot of like, hey, is there really a competitive edge here that we can bring to the marketplace? Is there really something unique? Because there's a lot of vendors that do something similar. So before we jump into the rest, like, just tell me, when you were going through that process, when you run this beta, right, and you were like, okay, there's something here, this is working, like, what was the reflection you had, and how much of it was, okay, let's do some market research, let's look at the competitive landscape, versus you maybe just saying, this is working, let's just double down on what is working and let's just go raise some money? Like, what was the thought process like at that point when you were still working and doing this sort of part-time?
So the key indicator that we were on the right track and that there was no easy, and easy is very important, easy solution, was that almost every host that we talked to said, oh yeah, I have the idea for this company. Or, oh yeah, I tried to do that. That there was a very clear problem that people were trying to solve on their own without the technology aspect. And if you look at that, people keep trying to solve this by using Shopify or using Etsy or doing something to make this system easier, and they haven't cracked it. So we knew that the problem was there. The second thing we did is that being my background at Facebook and Twitter, we developed a community on Instagram before we even had a product, because my co-founder and I could talk about the 5 newbie mistakes we made. Hey, what to do if regulation comes to your town, outdoor amenities you can provide. So we had a whole lot of value we could just add to the conversation about short-term rental hospitality in general. And from that, we built up, I think it's about 18,000 hosts now in our online community. And we were able, it was amazing. And on TikTok too, which was great, before we even launched a product. And we could just put it out there. Hey, what do you think of this? Would you use this? How do you feel about this? So we had those two things, this problem that was continually trying to be solved in a very non-automated way, and then a community just giving us continual feedback.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And in terms of like your entrepreneurial background. Was this the first time you actually went into business, by yourself, or had you had some entrepreneurial ventures as well in the past?
None, zero. I mean, I was from Facebook, Twitter, before that, embedded at Google, just like Bay Area eye roll, I would
Hmm.
say, of tech, and had never done anything on my own. And I did miss the free snacks, but I've moved on. So,
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. And in terms of, there's this saying that to take a startup, a tech startup, and bring it to scale, you need three type of co-founders: the hacker, the hustler, the hipster, right?
yes.
So someone that's like technical, someone that's like let's do sales, let's do marketing, let's do fundraising, and someone that's more like product, UX, UI. You mentioned, your co-founder. Just curious to know, how do you guys complement each other? What would you say are the different skill sets that you bring to the table there?
Um, my co-founder is number one, insanely hardworking and very pragmatic, very practical.
Hmm.
Keeps me grounded.
Hmm.
Uh, he also is very good with sales. So sales, he's the one. If you're doing a demo, we have other people that do demos, but if you're doing an enterprise demo, he's the one there.
Mm.
I am very much 2 years in the future thinking,
Okay.
and
Visionary.
he is right now. Is the insurance bill paid? All of that, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then we have an incredible technical team out of Los Angeles that has been an absolutely phenomenal partner and incredibly fast. So that triad has worked out very well.
Interesting. And
Yeah.
then you mentioned that you went and you raised funds. Was that your approach quite early on? Like, or how much did you bootstrap in terms of actually trying to get like sales results coming in and traction coming in before you went ahead and raised? Like, what was your approach there? Because a lot of companies, I feel like, are going through a transition right now, especially tech providers, where, back then, let's say, it was all about growth, growth, growth. Let's figure out profitability later, right? And now you're seeing that the market is starting to be less interested in not seeing a route towards profitability. So I'm just curious to know, in terms of the timing where you decided to go out in the market and raise some funds, what was your thinking, what was your approach, and how much traction did you have already at that point?
Um, this is I'm going to have the most 2021 answer is that we were pre-product when we went out to
Okay.
fundraise. So
Okay.
we did have our tiny beta. We had seven houses in our beta,
Okay.
and we raised our pre-seed round,
Yeah.
essentially pre-product. So we
Uh-huh.
had traction. We had this incredible, I guess you can call it traction from our first seven houses, but we didn't really have a product. And
Okay.
we knew that it was going to take a fair amount of money, a lot of money, to build a product that solved this problem, or else people would have done it already, right? So they would have gone
Uh-huh.
to Shopify, which, is not going to alert your cleaner to something, or, ping the recycling guy. So we raised money so that we could basically put it all into product. Again, we already had that
Hmm.
community. So we had a big wait list before we were even releasing
That's
it. We did,
huge. I mean, the
yeah,
fact you already had a community and a waiting list, I mean, that's
yeah,
that's huge.
yeah. And that took a long time. And we raised a round in 2021, our pre-seed round, and then we launched in November of 2022. So a year later, after we had
Mm.
started bringing in funds, we launched. We launched officially.
Very good. Very
Yeah,
interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah, no, it's definitely different times, I feel, right now.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, as long as you have traction, as long as you have good numbers, good unit economics, and I mean, the fact you had the community and the waiting list, I mean, I think that also makes all the difference. Now, let's talk about that concept that you've spoken about in the past, which is that when you've worked at these large technology companies, a lot of what you've done also with your storytelling background and whatnot is trying to bring the human aspect into technology, right? So tell us a little bit more about how you're tackling that right now with the host co, in terms of, yes, automating, but how do you automate without losing that human element?
yes, yes. So I'll start by saying the way that we built the host co, and this is a very, very important value, is it has to be something that is so easy to use that it
Mm-hmm.
takes 2 minutes to create a store and add it to your outgoing messaging. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that it is, number one, very easy to use. Number two, it is something that can be used on a phone. So you can link, you can text it, you can WhatsApp it, and also on the web. So for us, no downloads, no app, any language, and we are multi-currency as well. So um, something so simple that someone in this industry, short-term rental, is going to use it. And one of the reasons that we did that is also we've done a lot of research about the demographic of short-term rental hosts, even small business boutique hotels. It's majority female. It's
Mm-hmm.
majority over 40. Even in the US, I think it's 53% female short-term rental hosts on Airbnb.
Interesting.
In other countries, it's like 60, 65%.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and looking at those demographics, and it depends on where you look. Like if you're looking on Twitter, you're going to think it's mostly guys. If you're looking on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram, it's going to think it's mostly
Right.
girls.
No, but it's interesting that you have data that actually shows, the demographics. Interesting.
Yeah, our online community, which is completely organic, we're not, looking for one or the other. It's 73% female. The fastest growing demographic of hosts, according to Airbnb, is women over 60. So,
Interesting.
yeah. So when we look at our technology, it is what is something the person out there isn't going, what am I going to add to my tech stack? If they have, 3 or 4 rentals, maybe once they get to 10, but
Uh-huh.
they're thinking, what can I do to solve this problem? And what can I do to bring in more revenue because my bookings are down? Right. So that's
Mm-hmm.
the first element of it, is making something that is very friendly for users. It's not a 2-week onboarding. It's not multiple sessions. Right. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then on the guest side, again, guests don't like to read. What we like to say is assume your guest is either tired or drunk or both. Right? Like, guest, your
I
guest
love
is
it.
not looking for technology. Your guest is looking for a hangover kit, or it's midnight and they want more firewood after this. What you've given them for free has already run out, or they're
Uh-huh.
looking for something to do with their kids the next day and go snowshoeing, right? But they don't want to go 4 places to pick up equipment. So
Uh-huh.
how do you on their phone show them tiles that go, here's an answer for you, here's an answer, here's an answer, hit the plus button, tell me what time you want it, Apple Pay, and you're done. So making everything very simple and very, very friendly and human.
Interesting. So it seems like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you are mainly targeting or trying to work with the host community, the host vertical, the host segment. I feel like it's the majority, right? The
Yeah.
majority of short-term rental properties are managed by hosts that have less than 10 properties, right?
Yep.
We, tend to talk a lot in this space, when we go to the trade shows and with the property managers, the operators, and as a company, where I work at Angel Host, we actually work with, property managers that have 20 plus only. So anyways, the point is, we have like different technology providers, and different technology providers are focused on different type of customer segments, right? So I guess the natural question is, why focus on hosts? Is it because of the size of the market? You just thought it made more sense to go with hosts as opposed to try to become like an enterprise level solution? And are you foreseeing, you're talking about you're the one who sees 2 years down the line? Are you foreseeing tackle both and eventually become also an enterprise focused solution? Or is your core going to remain, individual hosts, and that's part of your competitive edge as well?
So we built our product with that smaller host in mind, because I think it's 80% of STR or Airbnb has under 10 units, right?
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is, within a few months, we started to see bigger and bigger clients.
Mm-hmm.
So, and our hunch was, oh, well, they have property management software that can do some of this stuff, right? So
Mm-hmm.
those smaller hosts, particularly internationally, they're not using any software because they live upstairs or next door, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we have started to see property managers with 30, 50. We have one with 400
Mm-hmm.
listings, because what we are doing is so focused on those local vendor upsells, and no PMSs are naturally have that, nor do they create an ecosystem where you can add your own. You can add your sister who's a portrait photographer, right? You can add the local bakery down the street to deliver, right? It's much more. I use Viator, and that's it, right? Those types of upsells.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been really surprised by the inbound from property managers in the last 6 months, I would say, once we've kind of ramped up to speed and we started
Mm-hmm.
adding features specifically for those larger providers. In fact, we just started our enterprise category, which is
Mm-hmm.
a lot more bells and whistles and integrates with quite a few more PMSs.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we were really surprised by that because we thought, okay, well, they already have something, but many of them, and there's a lot of great PMSs that we love and we work with,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
they just don't have what we have. So that's become an interesting element moving forward.
Yeah, no, I love the element that you're saying where you can add your own vendor and also trying to remove the necessity of the property manager or host being involved. Like the fact
Yeah,
that you can actually just have the guest coordinate that service with the vendor directly from the platform and have it be scheduled, and you even mentioned at some point reminders that are sent to the
mm,
vendor. I think that's huge. I think that's very, very interesting. Now, when you look at the actual platform you guys have built, you're a host as well. You
yeah.
are you used to be an arbitrage operator and whatnot. What would you say is really unique from all those features that you are describing here? There's a lot of, again, as we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of solutions. Like I think one of the things in this industry is that there's so much fragmentation. There's so many
Yeah,
providers that do this one thing here, and then for each vertical of technology you have like 10 alternatives, right? So I
yeah.
think it does become very important to have key elements of differentiation, right? And I'd like to know what you think are yours.
Oh, money. And why I
Okay.
say that is, so there's the back of the house PMS that's going to do all of your channel management, et cetera. And then you have the front of the house, which is going to do your guest experience, right?
Uh-huh.
But what we're doing is adding a revenue stream for you that can eclipse your nightly rate. So, for example, we have one host with a bunch of cabins around a lake. She is now being paid out. One host, she doesn't have that many cabins, $10,000 a month from the host co, and she is selling late checkout, early check-in firewood. That's pretty much what she's selling. Sometimes she's selling extra
Mm-hmm.
hot tub, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Guests that are making purchases of $3,600 for 4 massages for their girls' weekend and chef's dinner for 8. So,
Mm-hmm.
particularly on the booking side, there is so much competition around rates. That's why we use pricing dynamics, right? Your guest may say, "Oh, this was $5 cheaper, so I'm booking this $305 room, whatever."
Mm-hmm.
But once your guest is already booked, right now, everything after they book for you is generally a sunk cost, right? We, this big joke that they come on in and they crank up the AC and they throw open the windows, right? In
Mm-hmm.
California, like you start losing money right when they check in, they're breaking glasses, whatever it is. And of course, you need to provide an incredible hospitality experience. But if you look at the way hotels do it, a full service hotel is making 30 to 35% of their overall revenue on amenities and upsells. And STR is completely missing out on that. And hotels position it like a value add. Hey, if you're looking for anything else, hey, if you'd like an extra this, right? They're not selling you a toothbrush. They're not, never nickel and dime people. But this is a revenue stream that, again, when your guest is there, they're generally on vacation. They are time poor and cash rich, and they're looking, they're looking to spend money. And you can find ways that you are making more money off of the amenities than, I mean, it depends on your nightly rate, of course, but you're making a revenue stream that can rival your actual bookings.
That's very interesting. And
Yeah.
also, just I guess to understand the mechanics of it, we don't have to go into all the specifics necessarily, but I'm just curious to know, uh, like how does the split work between the vendor, between you and the guest, is there a fee that the guest absorbs? Is the model more so like, hey, it's the vendor who's going to benefit, so let's charge them? Like, what is it that you are looking at in terms of the actual business model of how you guys make money?
Yes. So first of all, our product, anyone can use it for free. We have a free model that anyone can use. And how it works is when your guest makes a purchase, if it's a vendor that the host co has recommended, like spa in your area, um, uh, your guest checks out, and we add a convenience fee on that total for your guest of 8%. And then we also, once that guest makes the purchase, we pay you out generally 5 to 10% of that item. So if it's $100 massage, you're going to get $10 just given to you. And then we keep that 8%, and that's how we make money
Mm-hmm.
on that product. If it's your product, let's say you're selling firewood,
Mm-hmm.
and you're selling firewood for $100, just say again, you're going to keep almost all of that, and we're going to get a commission from you, a small commission from you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Uh, yeah. So essentially, most of that cost is being passed over to the guest, right?
Got
Because
it.
they're making the purchase. So there's no money exchange before the guest makes a purchase. So it's very dependent on you making money first.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Interesting. No, that makes sense. Let's talk, Annie, a little bit about your background as a host, real estate investor, and whatnot. I'm just curious to know, because we also have that other side of the
Yeah.
coin, which we refer to being, again, part of the same coin. Essentially, if you don't have the investor, the host, the property owner buys the property, then how do you want to deliver that hospitality in short-term rental? So, yeah, tell us a little bit more about your background when it comes to that. Do you have a portfolio at this moment? Are you still doing arbitrage, or is it mainly just your properties right now, your actually investment properties right now? Tell us a little bit more about your experience as a host and investor.
Well, I was a young arbitrager in San Francisco when I wanted to travel the world, is what I'll say there. So I don't do that.
Were
I
you
no longer
okay?
am doing that. I do have a small real estate portfolio. And, one funny thing about it that I kind of will admit is that some of it I'm switching to midterm because of
Okay.
everything going on right now. Switching from short term to midterm, it's just there's less volatility.
Mm-hmm.
Also in urban markets where, there's a lot of new regulation, switching that.
Regulations, yeah.
And the funny thing is that I thought, oh man, the host code, like those amenities, people aren't looking for the same amenities when they're staying for 2 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the interesting thing is it's just different amenities. So your guests, because I started listening for what they're asking for, they want a
Mm-hmm.
Peloton rental for 3 months. They want a dog walker. They still want fresh flower delivery because they're away from their family for 2 months on a work thing or whatever it is. So
Interesting.
even in switching, seeing that, oh, wow, people still need stuff and they don't want to go to Yelp for 6 hours and try and figure out what they need and find someone trusted, etc. So I'm kind of going on both sides there. But I will say also, my take on it is, there's some great mortgage opportunities out there if you can find them right now. And it's always a good time to still be building your portfolio, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe do it we're looking for, in general, get rich slow. There is no right now, in general, I don't think there's a get rich quick. And I think if it
Mm-hmm.
is, you should be very wary of it. That's my take on real estate in general
Interesting.
right
Okay,
now.
so midterm rentals, because of regulations, a little bit more stability, while still being able to benefit from
Yeah.
services from the host co, just different type of upsells. That
Mhm.
makes sense. And in terms of your approach, like to new acquisitions right now, you're talking about there being great mortgage opportunities. You're referring to specifically like taking over someone's mortgage, perhaps, and doing it as such. Could you elaborate a little bit more on, is it
Yeah.
something you're actively looking at as well, or
Yes.
as far
Yeah.
as new acquisitions right now? Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say right now, I mean, there's less in the market.
Hmm.
There's just less availability in general. So myself and my partner are moving very slow in that regard,
Hmm.
but we are still moving, right? And I think
Good.
maybe that is that. get rich slow take on it instead of, okay, I'm buying 5 more units
Okay.
because of the volatility and because of obviously the mortgage rate. But anything that is seller financing or just looking at every possible other option
Okay.
besides that big old 8% is what I would say.
Right. No, definitely, definitely. Can you break down the mechanics of the kind of opportunity that you're looking for at this point? I mean, of course, seller financing, if available, that's very interesting. I mean, not that they would necessarily want to loan you for way cheaper than 8%, but you can negotiate terms that are favorable for both. Are you getting into some of those more complex, subject to and those kind of more advanced mechanics as well? What is it specifically that you're looking for right now as a get rich slow next
Well,
acquisition?
I would say that I there's people that know a lot more than me in that element. I would
Got it.
say, but I always go back to the cash on cash. Just do the numbers, right?
Hmm.
It doesn't matter what the mix is. Just do the numbers, right?
Yeah.
And if it works, it works. And no matter what it is, try and figure out as many variables as you can and plug them in different places to get it to the best possible number,
Sure.
right? And that's it. That's the Bible, right? Is always come back to that.
So you're looking at cash on cash
Yeah.
specifically, mainly. That makes sense. And also the other thing I think with midterm rentals is that, well, at least in Canada, it's very hard for banks to recognize revenues of short-term rental properties when it's single-family properties, right? They're gonna base themselves on comparables to value your property. So if you want to refinance because you've increased the revenues or something like that, it's not as doable as in commercial real estate. I guess midterm rentals is also a nice in the middle in terms of the kind of financing terms that you could get. I don't know if you would agree with that.
Yeah. Again, I don't think I'm the best person to ask about this, but yes, you may show it more consistently and less volatility too. I mean, it's really not that different from regular renting. I have midterm people who've asked for 6 months, right?
Uh-huh.
But it also gives you more options too. So um,
Uh-huh.
you can say 3 months at a time, and then you're also not having them sign the same traditional type of lease. So if all of a sudden you go, oh, for some reason, this is a great time to sell, or someone's offering me an incredible deal here, you just have way more flexibility than with long term, especially in California where there's a lot more regulation around that. With
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
midterm or month to month, you're gonna have a lot more options.
You get the best of both worlds, like a
Yeah,
little bit more liquidity, closer to STR without the tightness and regulations of long term. That's
yeah,
interesting. All right, so going back to the host school, I want to go back to those values that you're referring to as far as what you're trying to build the business around. One of them is make it easy. Assume the guest is either drunk or tired or both. I really like that. What are other elements that you think are foundational to the way you're trying to scale this organization in terms of either the team or the user experience that you're trying to put in place?
So user experience wise, there's two parts of that. One is show immediate value. So
Mm.
I had a call with someone yesterday, and I thought I was setting them up for an enterprise onboarding to even show them the product, and they said, "Oh no, we started this week and we already made 2 sales." And that's the best feat. Like, great. Just you can start with 2 items in your store. You can put it in your automated messaging right after booking. If you'd like any
Mm-hmm.
services while you're here, check out our store. Totally fine with 2 items in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That type of thing for us is as soon as you show a guest your store, you should start seeing positive returns. If it's sales, if it's someone saying, oh, that's cool, right? So it's not something where 2 months later you're starting to see the ROI, particularly because what we're doing is somewhat of a new consumer behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to show that return quickly. And then once you have that, they start to go, oh, okay, you know what we should sell? Oh, you know what we should offer? And building that up so they're always getting more value out of your product instead of just the consistent
Mm-hmm.
product, which also helps you build your portfolio because you're making more money, right? And takes
Mm-hmm.
you out of working in your work and just working on your work. Um, that is one major value. The second is we built the host co with the long-term idea in mind of having um, positive financial results for developing nations, which sounds very grandiose, I realize, but I grew up in a lot of weird, just you throw a dart at it, I probably lived there some point in my life again, like somewhere. Um, there are a lot of places where someone might be spending 30, 40, $50 a night, and there's lots of competition. Maybe there isn't even an OTA involved, right? You get to the dock and there's a bunch of people there saying, hey, come stay here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, particularly when you have these foreign tourists with a lot of money coming into developing areas, once they're at your house, they will buy your grandkids grand handicrafts and a tote bag and a sun hat and a case of water, right? And all of a sudden, they've spent $200 on your place, whereas you can only charge them $30 a night. So,
Mm-hmm.
much our very macro values is getting this as a very, very easy to use technology on a phone, on WhatsApp, into the hands of those operators in more developing tourism areas. That's a much longer term goal. First, we have to really make sure the US is solid, and we're opening in Canada at the end of this year as well. And then
Mm-hmm.
taking that into more remote areas and seeing how that does.
I love it. Yeah, no, the impact that tourism can have on this, communities that at the end of the day
Yeah.
depend very heavily on that tourism. But as you said, a lot of that revenue doesn't necessarily benefit them beyond
Yeah.
the rate, beyond the rate that they might be charging. So how can you get the local host in those emerging, countries to capture more of that revenue, that it stays within the community and that it doesn't necessarily go into just those traditional, more touristic, let's say providers. So I like that long-term vision, and I think it's also needed. I think it's definitely a platform that, of course, there's so much for it to be developed in the US alone. But I mean, we work in 50 cities with 1,200 properties. A lot of Mexico. I'm originally from Colombia, where there's there's a huge surge in tourism as well, and
Yeah.
I can totally see how, like, the societal impact that this could have as you're talking about it. I'm like hearing about it. I'm getting excited. So no, I love that. I love that. And in terms of the team building side of it, well, I just want to talk about what you just said about delivering value fast
Yeah.
and showing value fast, right? There's this value equation that this guy called Alex Hormozy, he's just like a business content creator, so to speak. He talks about it, and I think it's relevant because you're talking about it, and I'm like, yeah, that's it. The speed at which you can deliver value is a huge element of your value component, right? The more you can offer something that, like, and an example of that is, why is it that a gym membership costs so much less than, let's say, if you go and get a surgery, right? You go and get a surgery to get the plastic surgery for whatever. Why is it that it costs 10 times more to get plastic surgery than your gym membership? It comes down to the speed of delivery. Like, it comes down to the speed of getting
Yeah.
value. So, anyways, just wanted to point that out because it made me think of that. But yeah, let's talk about your values. Okay, so those are great values, customer facing values, in terms of the customer experience and whatnot. What are you trying to build as a company internally, right? In terms of your employees, the kind of people you're looking for, the kind of work environment you're trying to put in place. I mean, you've worked with many large technology organizations. Curious to know if there's anything from those cultures you would bring on, or what is it that you are trying to build that is different or perhaps similar in some way to what you've experienced on the other side of that coin as an employee in the past.
I will say two things. One, it is very important that we are people and that you see our faces, particularly because our clients are people who want to see faces and talk to people. They don't want to figure things out they don't want to figure things out in our FAQ. Some of them are like, what's a FAQ? Just to
Mm-hmm.
be honest with you. So being people, being accessible,
Mm-hmm.
And staying human are very important in that regard. Um, on a values level for our company, there's so many, but I'm a female CEO and co-founder, and my co-founder is gay. So, it is very rare to see either of those. It's changing, but as tech founders, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have not seen, and the same thing was in the film and TV industry to see a director. Um, when I was directing, didn't see a lot of directors that looked like me. I was directing commercials. I'd never met another female commercial director when I was directing commercials, which is just mind blowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in our hiring practices, making sure that we keep diversity in mind, right? And that diversity is not for the sake of what it looks like. It is because those different perspectives make us a stronger company and they actually have proven that having more diverse voices within your company, and that includes every, gender, race, everything, it just makes you're actually a more successful company. So making sure that we keep that in mind. And it's so easy, even for me, to hire people that look like me and sound like me because it's what I'm comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, being a little uncomfortable and getting a little bit more uncomfortable so I can learn more is a huge part of just being a leader as well.
Wow. No,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing diversity. Yeah, it brings so many different perspectives, and at the end of the day, that's what you need in order to build a successful company. If everyone you have on your team is always going to agree with your way of seeing things, there's not much, triangulation that leads to innovation or leads to breakthroughs or leads to just creativity in general. So I feel like it's amazing. It's amazing to see this. Annie, when you look forward, maybe just to wrap things up, I want to know what's the long-term vision. We talked a little bit about the impact you want to have on society as well with this going into more emerging, countries and whatnot. But what's next for you guys? What's the next or the current big initiative that you're working on? What can people expect to see from Annie and from the host co in the coming years?
Well, I will say this. We have a partnership with Tourism Portugal that we are launching in
Mm,
the end of February of next year to bring our software to many of those very small business hospitality hosts.
mm-hmm,
Portugal and Spain are getting ready for the World Cup in 2030.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And, you know, outside of the bubble here in Canada and the US, I mean, we are so technology forward. People are not using those technologies that can benefit them, particularly in hospitality, those small business hospitality. And they're kind of like,
mm-hmm,
well, I'm doing what I'm doing. I don't need to do anything different. But by saying you can double your revenue by adding these elements and make your guests happy. So the first big thing for us is opening in Europe, in Southern Europe, in
mm-hmm,
early in the next year, and getting that out through the tourism industry partnerships in Spain and Portugal. And then from there, I every day I see a new OTA or someone who's doing something new with
mm-hmm,
STR for midterm. And there's companies pop up and companies close and companies pop up. But I do see a real diversification based on niche, which is something that I've really seen from your podcast or listening to is people are getting down to getting away from Airbnb and getting more towards I want to go to a castle in Ireland that I have historical family ties to, or I want to go to this one OTA that only does outdoor adventures.
mm-hmm,
Uh, I see it really moving away from Airbnb to those more niche communities, and having the host co being a facilitator of specific amenities for those different types of communities. We had someone in upstate New York who said, I'm really big in the knitting community. This is one of the weirdest things. We get the coolest, most unusual people, I will say, but I want to offer amenities. Almost everyone who comes to stay at my place is here because they want local wool or they're in my knitting community on the knitting train area. It's so strange and wonderful. So we said, great. If you want to connect the person who will come in and do that knitting class, if you want to connect that farmer that will, show them around their sheep, Great. And then your property essentially can be rebranded as a knitting destination just because you've
Uh,
added these specific amenities. So, just more and more. And I know that Airbnb is working to do this, and we have a great relationship with them, but um, it's going to get much more niche based on your interests.
yeah, and just out of curiosity, there, if let's say a host adds a vendor, and now all of a sudden they can use that particular vendor, they can offer that those services to their guests. Is it also possible for now other hosts in that community to benefit from that same vendor that was added by one of your hosts?
So if the host co adds the vendor, then everyone within a 25-mile radius of that zip code
Okay, but
has
that's
access.
if the host co adds it. If it's the host adding it just for themselves, let's say they
Yeah,
know someone locally and they is that's the one they want to use.
yeah.
Does it first need to go through a vetting process or something for it to be host co approved and sent across the entire user?
Yeah.
Uh, okay, yeah, okay, so that's
We
how it
have
works.
very strict regulations around the vendors that we recommend for insurance, cancellation policy, great reviews, etc. But we find vendors often because hosts have added their own vendor and they are responsible for the vetting of that vendor because they're running a property, so they're generally not a ne'er do well. I would say they're very cautious because they have reviews as well. But if we see that vendor selling really well in that area, we will
Mm-hmm.
contact that host and that vendor and say, hey, would you like to be available to the entire city? And sometimes the host will say, I don't want you to show my vendor to everyone else because
Mm,
they're a chef that we book them. We've got 8 cabins. They're booked all the time. I don't want you to
okay.
show other people.
Yeah, you just keep it for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And then sometimes they say, yeah. And that vendor, I mean, that's another value of ours is bringing more money into the community, the small business community for that area. Right. Um, So it is a very easy way for us to scale is by enabling hosts to add their own vendors, and then eventually we have a 3-person vendor vetting team that goes through vendors. I will also say, and for anyone that uses the host co, have 8 things that you sell. Don't be the brochure rack at the Best Western with 200 items, and it's people paradox of choice. I don't know what to do here. Um, just have 8 things or 6 even because
Hmm.
sells consistently and you don't want to keep piling things on. Maybe you have some nice seasonal stuff too, like we'll decorate for the holidays or a tiki bar guy or whatever it is. But
Hmm.
very, very limited with the vendors that we choose. And we also work with a lot of the contracted vendors that hotels use. So we know they're very high quality. So, Massage, Soothe, and Zeal, and chefs from Fire, Forks, and Knives. So we are only going to we're only going to do things that have very, very strong record of incredible guest experience.
I love it. No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, listen, Annie, I think this has been very interesting, just in terms of considering how you can use amenities and upsells as an edge. The perspective you gave around how this represents 30% of the revenues for hotels, and how, to your point, for actual, short-term rental hosts and professionals, it's more so being a thing of like, hey, nice to have, right? If you
Yeah.
want to have it, yes. If not, perfect. But I think there's definitely a need in facilitating that process. Seems like you're building a great company culture as well, really focused on customer experience and delivering value and making it things easy and seamless for people to use. So no, I'm really really looking forward to seeing you develop and grow, and I look forward to, yeah, just having another conversation maybe 1 year from now, and seeing all the growth that will have happened since then. But yeah, no, this has been very very insightful, Annie. Where can people connect with you? You talked about your community that you have as well, where you deliver a lot of tips. So yeah, where can people connect and follow the journey?
So they can head to our website and they can schedule some time to chat with us and see the platform at www.thehost.co.
Hmm.
And you can also find us on Instagram at the Host Company.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that's where the community stuff is happening as well, or
yeah,
is that
yeah.
is
You'll
that
see
it?
my co-founder and I. You'll see us talking quite a bit on there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, listen, Annie, thanks so much for taking the time. I could keep you here for hours, but yeah, I'm looking at the time and looks like it's time to go. So really,
No,
really enjoy the conversation. Thanks so much once again, and I really hope we'll be able to reconnect very shortly.
thank you. This has been, in the words of California here, super awesome.
Super awesome. Yeah, likewise. We'll talk soon. Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye.